Wonderful. I think we're live. Do you think we're live? Wonder how long it takes.
We are live.
There may be a second delay. Ladies, welcome. We're so glad you're here. We are going to be talking about today what boundaries are appropriate when someone won't talk to you, i.e., your husband. What do you do? How do you communicate? What do you do? How do you set some good boundaries around that? So, if you are with us, I would love for you to kind of say hello. We're here so that we know that we're live. Hey, Diana, glad we get to do this together. We really enjoy all of us coaches when we get to do it together. It's a lot of fun. Solo is a little bit more difficult, but we have a lot of fun doing that. So wonderful. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, Sharon, good to see you. And so glad to hear you still have your voice. That's really super encouraging. So we're going to be talking. Would love to see a few of you more join on while we get started. And this is a great subject because I think one of the things is that one that I would love for us to talk about today is how much really power that we have, because it feels powerless at this moment when we've got the silent treatment going on. Someone won't connect with us. What can we do about it? So anyway, I would love to kind of ask this question as we start off, if it's okay, Diana, with you.
Absolutely.
Is that we ask the question, do you have choices at that moment? Or, oh, this external thing is going on. You can feel it internally, this pressure going on, but externally, you have something going on in your life. Someone on the other side of you is refusing to engage with you. And what do you do about that? What choices might you have? And so I would love for you guys to kind of put that in the chat a little bit and just kind of let's just jump right in, dive right in, head first into this subject. And first I'm going to say hello. Currently going through good boundaries and goodbye studies. Yes, looking forward to this. Wonderful. I hope so. But let's answer this question. Do you have choices at that moment? Or if you do, what are they? Let's start talking about that. Use our people voice. This is so timely. Hello from Arizona. Good morning. Yeah, let's just keep, I believe that you do. And so I want to basically just reach out and say, we've got some choices. Let's start talking about that. Because I think in that moment, it can feel so awkward and it can feel like you don't have any choices. So kind of the theme through today is I would love to start talking about what choices that you have, and we'll start talking more about boundaries. Never have had strong boundaries. Well, Bridget, let's talk about those boundaries today. And this is a hard one to have strong boundaries on, but I think we can. Yes, we have choices. Debbie, what choice might we have? Would love for you to kind of speak up. What choice, if it was happening to you, what choice would you have? Forgive and take care of yourself without accepting the behavior as okay. Absolutely. That's a choice. We always have choices. Yes. Sandra, what would be your choice in that moment? Let's hear. I'm learning to make healthier choices. This is a hard one. Let's speak into it. Diana, how might you prompt them?
Well, I'd like to say, so really the scenario is someone's not talking to me, right?
Right.
What are my options with that?
Right.
If they're not, where can I find my agency? I like to use that term, agency.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. They're not talking to me. I don't know what might that feel like, Elise? It might feel a little helpless.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I always feel like when someone behaves a certain way, it teaches us something,
right,
about the relationship.
Right.
If they're not speaking to me, it tells me really that they're not interested in engaging or having a relationship with me. So when I think about boundaries, I think about me first. And I know that it's classic when we're talking about setting boundaries with others. We always think about how can I set a boundary with someone? But for me, the first thing I do is like, what boundaries will I set for myself around this behavior?
Right. Right. Yeah. And so I think if we kind of run through the boundaries, kind of quick, is that, who am I and who am I not? Can we really understand our own identity? And then what will I do? What won't I do? Kind of what will I accept? What won't I accept? And then, what belongs to me and what's my responsibility? And so all those really are about us internally. It helps us identify who we are. And so it shifts from external, what's going on and how he's choosing, to internal, now what will that mean for me? Right? And so let me look at the chat a little bit here. So try until you've tried everything and there's still no response, then it's time to walk away because you cannot make someone want to have a relationship with you. That's an option.
So
right? Yeah.
also step away.
Yeah.
I don't have to move towards someone if they're not wanting to engage with me.
Right.
They're not willing to talk with me. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I can choose to speak. I don't know how it'll be received, but I can also step away and accept what is Sandra's saying.
Right.
Um,
Right.
And you know what I think, Elise, when we talk about accepting what is, that's a really powerful statement.
Yes.
And acceptance is key, because if I can't accept what's happening, it's going to cause a lot of frustration, a lot of pain and suffering and angst for me, because I'm trying to make something happen.
Right.
Or I'm hoping for something to happen that's just not a possibility.
Yeah.
And so I'm stuck in this place of I can't do anything with this, but I'm holding all of this, I think, with intensity.
Right. Oh, I love that word. I think that's true. I think that we can be getting, internally pretty angry, frustrated, and there's just a lot of intense feelings.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect word. And it's like,
well, yeah, I'm desiring something that's not possible for me, and it's painful to be in this to begin with. And so, what do I do with all that? So, accepting for me is just a huge exhale. I can accept, like, there's nothing for me to do in this moment.
Right. Right. I learned a little bit from attending Al-Anon years ago. Learning to detach was one of those lessons. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think she said, it sounds like that's who you are going to be. I have no power or control over that. It doesn't change who I can be, though. Right. But as you're saying, Diana, this acceptance piece, I have to accept that that's who you're going to be. That's sad. That's grievous. It's frustrating. Ladies, it's not the way it should be, especially if this is a marital relationship. We're just, we're kind of speaking a little more globally, that this could be a relationship with a sibling, with a child, with, an adult child. It could be with any relationship that someone's really choosing not to speak to you. And
So
so,
you said something really powerful, Elise, and something to mention is that when we step into acceptance, it does relieve some things, but also stepping into acceptance, we might be stepping into grief.
right.
Letting go of what's not possible can be loss, and there's emotions involved with that. And sometimes we've talked about that. I talked about this yesterday with my group. We talked about, holding on to hope can feel better, even if it's hope in the impossible or what's not happening, rather than stepping into the emotions of the reality of, I can't do anything with this.
Right. And when you say I can't do anything with this, I think, sometimes we really do have to come to that powerless place. And in this situation, I am powerless to make him engage. It still doesn't mean I'm powerless.
Right.
Right. And I really want to, yes, Linda, it is sad. And Donna says, control what we can. And so that's it. When I come to this place of acceptance, I say, I can't control that piece, but I can control this piece. What choices do I have? How will I walk in that acceptance? And one of the choices could be that I don't like this marriage of indifference, of someone not engaging me, but there may be some benefits from this relationship. You know, can we examine what we may gain from the relationship? We don't gain communication. We don't, you know, we don't gain, uh, being connected in a way that it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
But there may be some other benefits, that I do have a helping hand with the children. I do have resources now that I won't have otherwise. I do have some level of protection that I may not have otherwise. And so we don't, as you and I engage with clients, we don't always know why someone stays or someone leaves. I mean, they may share with us, but we want to say that it is part of the choice, that I may not like our disconnectedness, but there may be some other things that I can begin to appreciate about the relationship. And so then I have a choice of how I'm going to step into that attitude, right? And so the choices are not just, well, accept it, not accept it. How might I accept it? Why might I accept it? And if I accept to stay, why might I stay? If I accept to step away, why might I do that? Right? And so the very first word you used, Diana, was this agency, right? And that I'm going to use my boundaries. Who am I? Who am I not? I am a woman that loves connection. I'm a person that really folds up if I don't have connection. So that's my boundary. That's one of my boundaries. So I will be in a relationship where there's, connectivity, where there's communication, where there's, connection. I won't be in, but that's just totally up to the individual. Right. And so, real quickly, I want you to think of, and Leslie's used this example before in some of her talks, that you're thinking of a boundary like your yard. Like most of us are property owners. And so we know where our property ends and where somebody else's property begins. And so what I can't do is I can look over in your yard and think to myself, you need to mow your grass, trim your bushes, do something with your trash cans or whatever. I can look over there, but it doesn't belong to me. I can't, I maybe could speak up, but that's as far as it goes. And so the boundary may be that I have to really understand I can only take care of my yard, and there's a place where I end and another begins. What will I do with what I have? And so let me continue. Why don't you read some of the comments or questions, Diana, and let's continue to talk about this.
Well, I think one of the comments is, I don't know what to do in that situation. My husband does this to me. I can accept his choice and don't try to make him change. And again, we hear the theme of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, I mean, this is Sabrina saying this, and I'm thinking you do know what to do. You did step into acceptance, and you're recognizing that you can't make him change.
Right.
And so I think that's really empowering, because you're enabling yourself to really, with awareness, know what you can and cannot do.
Right.
And that's, oftentimes we can't change what's happening externally, but we can change our response internally. Mm-hmm. And that's where you may feel like you have some choice and some power. Carol's saying that I feel fearful that engaging him will be poking the bear. And I'm wondering, if you could say a little bit more about that. I mean, maybe that's not just feeling fearful, but maybe you've experienced in the past that whenever you try to talk about what matters to you and maybe move towards setting some boundaries, you get some pushback. Right. And pushback can come in a small way, maybe with gestures and facial expressions, and it can come in a large way, maybe with verbal abuse, stomping, all those kinds of things. And I'm not sure, what the situation is there to invoke the fear. Mm-hmm. Sometimes being fearful can say, it's just not wise to go there. Yeah. Because the result of me going there over the course of this relationship has taught me that it will be difficult for me for several days, and I'm not willing to pay that price.
Right. Right. But again, you're using agency to make that decision. And you're using, past experience to inform you of what's likely to happen in the present, right? And then I think the question sometimes comes up around that is then what will that mean for me if I'm in a relationship that I really can't speak into something? It's just
Let's
a
see.
place, certainly, but I think it's a question that we have to ask. And so oftentimes we stay in this hope or not in reality that this is a really challenging and difficult relationship. I'm not going to get what I want from this relationship.
Yeah. So
Well,
as you,
right and honest.
yeah, as you're defining externally what's possible and what's not possible, you get to choose how you want to respond to that. And I think it's all a great learning experience,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And a growth opportunity. So there are some questions that I pulled from one of the articles Leslie did. And, the question you can ask yourself is develop some more awareness is how is this really impacting me? I have to know how this is impacting me. In other words, to know what I need to do next, right?
Yes. Say more about that.
Yeah, like, is this so dysregulating for me that I can't think clearly, that I can't do what I need to do in my life? And so it's going to inform you, like if I can't think clearly,
Right.
and this inability to really have this person engage with me,
Right.
I may need to make some shifts. I may need to create some distance. I may need to quite literally make a list of what it is I need to focus on because I have to get to some clarity and some higher functioning, right?
Right.
So I'm going to focus my energy off of what's not happening externally and internally, like how, and someone said it in the chat, taking care of me.
Right.
How do I take care of me and reprioritize my life? Because obviously this cannot be a priority because it's not a mutual priority, right? And so noticing the impact to me, like, is it draining me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is it confusing me? Am I having thoughts with clarity?
Right.
And
How often am I thinking about it? Am I ruminating
yeah,
nonstop?
yeah,
Am I always thinking about it? How
yeah,
much energy does it take, you know,
and
away from me?
yeah. And so, and are there some pieces of this or some expectations that I can let go of or expectations that I can get in line with? And I think sometimes we're just really, I think the majority of the women that we work with have really good hearts and they're hardworking women. And
Yeah.
sometimes we work too hard at the things that we can't influence, right? We just don't give up. And I think there might be some wisdom in just saying, okay, I'm going to let that go. I can't get through to him
Right.
or I won't be heard in this way.
Right. Right. I think another thing that's hard to say is it really doesn't matter to him or he doesn't care, right? He doesn't care that we're disconnected. He doesn't care. It doesn't really matter to him. So what does that
So,
mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, yeah, I like to focus on, I like to focus, and you taught me this word to use is speculation. I'm not going to speculate about what's going on in his heart or in his mind, but I'm going to focus on the behavior, like what he does and what he doesn't do, what he allows me to talk about, and what he gets upset about.
Right.
Um, and so along with that, Debbie's saying, put my mask on and set healthy boundaries. So what does that look like, ladies? If it's really not possible to set a boundary with someone, and maybe you've talked about what matters to you and what doesn't work for you, and you just get indifference back.
Right.
So then what would that look like for you to pause, step away, and set some healthy boundaries for yourself? What are some internal boundaries that you could set that would enable you to be strong and healthy in this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love some of the comments and why you ask the question one more time, Diana, what you just asked, so that
Okay.
yeah,
What does it look like for you to accept the possibility that this individual is not hearing me or responding to my boundaries or really even willing to engage in this conversation? So there's no mutual relationship.
right.
What does it look like for me to step into acceptance and set some boundaries around myself? What might some of those boundaries be? that I might set
Yes.
that might lead me to a stronger sense of agency and well-being.
Right. Even as Debbie says, sometimes a separation is needed. I was losing me trying to help him, right? And I think that that's a boundary. Like,
Mhm.
I'm going to begin to take care of me, right? And so I won't, boundaries are oftentimes what we will do and what we won't do. I won't allow any more energy to go towards this. I'm losing me in the process. And that's a boundary. And so oftentimes we think boundaries are rules or there's something that we're trying to set on others. And it's really what we're trying to say, what we will do with our life. Who am I? Who is the girl that's saying indifference is okay or not okay? Can I hear her? What will she do with that knowledge? What will she do with that information? If he doesn't care, what will I do with that? Let's answer some of those questions that you asked. My therapist told me that the most harming thing I can do for my dad is to leave him with his choices. Not quite sure where to go with that.
Yeah, if you could say more about that, I'm not sure what
Yes.
that means. Oh, I think I understand what that might be. Is to leave him alone with the choices that he's made. Let him make his
So
choices and
the most
just
honoring thing. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah. Well, it is honoring. I mean,
It
they
is.
get to be this, the other individual in the relationship gets to choose what they want. Sometimes we have a hard time accepting that. And right?
Yeah, well, especially if we don't think it's a great choice. If we think it's harming them and it's harming us, for sure.
I honestly, at least, I think sometimes what we long for is so strong that it's hard to pull back and to really take the time that we need to think about, okay, now how do I really want to respond to this?
Mhm.
I don't know. I have to think about that and I'd have to be really intentional. Like it doesn't, for me, it wouldn't happen in a moment. I have to write it down and
Mhm.
remember, okay, so I'm not going to attempt to engage this person in this way.
Mhm.
Or I think one of the boundaries, and certainly I'm sure some of our ladies have thought of this as well, is, what will I do with what I choose to share with this person?
For sure.
So setting a strong internal boundary is I don't let certain people have access to certain places in my heart, certainly the deeper places in my heart. Why would you do that, right?
Right.
If you're
So,
being met with indifference.
Diana, speak to this just a little bit. Jennifer writes, I always feel guilty about boundaries. And my first blush is a little bit to say, kind of to listen to herself, like, what does she say about boundaries? And where does the guilt come from? What is it that she's telling herself that she can or cannot do about setting boundaries? And how is she, what is she saying to herself that those, that they're harsh, they're not right? I'm kind of curious. So if you'd say a little bit more about that, Jennifer, I'd be curious. Because when we take a stand, then we have to take full ownership, right? Of if I say that's not okay with me, then actually I'm stepping into full ownership and full responsibility for myself. And so oftentimes on the other side of us, it's somebody is not going to feel great about the boundary that you set. Maybe that's why you're feeling guilty. What are your thoughts maybe around that a little bit, Diana?
I think first and foremost that guilt is probably an emotion we've picked up along the way and we've been manipulated,
Yeah.
around guilt. I mean, think about it, even when you're a kid, you know what I mean? Like, I,
You're so mean.
I remember my daughter telling me, yeah, I
Yeah.
remember, I picked it up naturally, I think. And I remember my daughter saying to me, don't play guilt with me. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I was doing it unintentionally sometimes we learn that as a kid, like our parent might induce guilt to get us to behave better. So it
Mhm.
becomes a natural thing that we respond to. So you kind of have to ask yourself the question, does this guilt really belong to me?
Right.
Right. Um, and then the other thing I think with guilt is when I'm setting a boundary with somebody, I might then not have appropriate boundaries with myself, because if I'm setting a boundary with them, like, no, I really can't come over and help you tonight. And then I feel bad. because they're disappointed, I'm taking responsibility for how they feel.
Right.
And so when we talk about this setting boundaries, I think the first clear boundary is I'm not responsible for your feelings and
There
your
it is.
emotions. I'm
There it is.
responsible to be respectful towards you
Right.
and not to be a jerk, and intentionally harm your feelings. But if you feel bad about me saying I can't do this or I don't want to be talked to this way,
Mhm.
um, that's not my issue. And
Mhm.
so for me, certainly one of the things I would do with that is notice that I have a problem when people feel bad when I don't agree with them or
Mhm.
allow them to do what they want to do because it doesn't work for me or something like that.
Mhm.
And I need to kind of work on that of letting go of that guilt. And I'd have to come up with some self statements for myself, like, this isn't your job. This isn't your role. Their feelings are their feelings. And I mean, I've done all that, you know,
Right.
like that's their stuff. I'm not going to feel your feelings for you
Right.
is one that
Right. Right.
I
And I
have
would
to
say
move.
that's not an easy shift. If you've always taken ownership for somebody else's feelings and you've placated to it and you've changed yourself and you've given in and you've been a natural people pleaser, that's not an easy shift. But I love how you're really kind of bringing notice to that feeling, right? And that this is a feeling. Is that, do I want to be guided and directed by just that feeling? Can that feeling, kind of what I hear you saying, Diana, is can that feeling inform me? Like, what's that guilt about? Like, I'm feeling guilty. Okay, what do I want to do? Is that guilt true? Right? Did I do something wrong? Or is that guilt just the pressure of someone on the other side of me not liking me setting healthy boundaries for myself?
Yeah.
And oftentimes we've gotten in relationships where, people pleasing worked and it's how the relationship went. But now we're seeing that my people pleasing is endless, that it will never be enough for me to say yes and yes and yes and yes and yes, right? That it's not a mutual relationship of give and take, of yes and no's, right?
Right.
I'm not in a relationship of no's. There's no no. I'm only as good as my yes. And I would be, like really helping her examine that, where is that guilt coming from? Absolutely. So
Yeah.
let's engage some of these, so much activity going on. So I've told myself it's about the generations to come and that I have the power to affect change for my kids, grandkids, and so on. It may not be fully realized until time passes. Drawing a line in the sand for future generations is not only a sacrifice, it's a gift of legacy. This is the kind of legacy I want to leave my daughters. I have to tell myself to pick my heart. Yeah. And so, Wanda, thank you so much for that comment. And so I'm making a little bit of an assumption is that maybe that's why either you're going to stay or going to leave. That this is about how I'm teaching future generations around that. How freeing it is to see that boundaries are an act of love. They are, right? An act of love for yourself and often an act of love for somebody else. Like, I won't, it's not healthy and it's not even loving for me to allow you to harm me, for me to allow you to treat me in that manner. I must stand for myself and say, this is toxic. This isn't okay. And they still have agents to say, yeah, it is okay. And then that informs me further to go, I don't believe that that's true. And so how will I take care of myself? And boundaries really are about a really healthy self-love of how we care for ourselves. In return, we're always responsible for them. And so we have to be saying, is this a good, healthy boundary for me to implement in this situation? And this is one of the things, if I can, just for a second, Diana, to talk about when we talk about walking in core strength, and we are inviting you. And if our assistant would just kind of help post that up, all the information around walking in core strength, that this is part of the R piece. And this is really where we do talk about boundaries a lot, is in the CORE, in the R piece around walking in core strength, is that we are taking full responsibility for ourselves. while still remaining respectful to others. And I love that that's paired up with responsibility. Like I can't take responsibility for myself and then be disrespectful to somebody, right? I'm going to still remain respectful because that's who I am. And I'm responsible to do that. And so when I feel guilty, that's my responsibility to be asking, not somebody else's responsibility to, give me the green light. It's my responsibility to give myself the green light. And ladies, one of the things that we have to understand is we're not going to guess right every time. When we set boundaries, there's going to be some times that I know in my own life, I've said, wow, now I was a little too rigid there, or I was a little too strict. I wish I would have been a little more generous or a little kinder in that thought. So we are not going to get it right. But the more we practice healthy boundaries, the more opportunity we're going to get it right. Right. And the more opportunity we're going to know ourselves well internally. And we're going to bear that to others. People aren't going to be guessing. Will she say yes or no? Well, my mom says yes most of the time, but no, some of the times, right? Is that there's some real consistency on how we're known. And I believe that boundaries really are about how we define ourselves to others. And oftentimes, if we are natural people pleasers, we're probably going to pair up with people who are natural takers. They love people that are going to say yes and not push back. They don't naturally, pair up with people that they're going to be in conflict with, that are going to say no and say, hey, there's a me and a you. It's like, no. So they tend to be high takers, pair up with high givers. Right. And so really kind of taking a look at yourself. Wow. How is it that I'm always compelled to give? Why don't I see a healthy balance in my yes and my no, in my give and my take? And I think that when we set healthy boundaries, we define ourselves well with our children, with our spouse, with our, people we work with our neighbors. And there's not a lot of guesswork. And so people, so what happens sometimes is as you ladies are beginning to set healthier boundaries, if you haven't had healthy boundaries and you're beginning to step into that, I think that it's very natural to get some pushback around that. It's like, what? That's not who you are. You say yes. All I have to do is get big. All I have to, is raise my voice. All I have to do is stomp my feet, and you back down. Right? And so if that's how you've naturally defined yourself, when we start moving away from that, there's going to be, just this dissonance, like, wait a minute, that's not who you are. And so kind of be prepared for that, for it not to work on some level as you step into redefining yourself, taking full responsibility for yourself. Right? So
I got a question for you, Elise.
yeah. Well, you can answer. Go ahead. I've been talking.
While I take care of myself and decide not to engage with him, do I have to tend to my wife, home stuff to do? Serve your plate, do your laundry. I don't see him like my husband anymore.
I think that's a good question. Kind of why would she do that and why wouldn't she do that? That belongs to her. Why would I do his laundry? Why would I cook dinner? Why would I, what is my responsibility? What is our, what's going on? Why I would make those choices to or choices not to.
I'll tell you, I have a simple example. And it's not because of difficulty. Like for me, I have a boundary. I stopped cooking for everybody in my house because they don't eat like I do, and I was throwing away food.
Yeah.
So, everybody has their own arrangements. My husband and I have always done our own laundry. He does his, I do mine. I don't want him doing mine because I'm picky, and he doesn't mind doing his.
Right.
But at least is correct. That's something that you have to negotiate. And when you say, do I have to, we don't have to do anything.
Right.
We choose, and you get to make the choices based on your circumstances, and I think the attitude with which you do it can say everything, like I'm not like, I don't know, like a word isn't coming to me other than nasty right now, but I'm not nasty. Like, and I go, you make your own dinner. I'm making mine. I don't like what you eat. You know what I mean? It's, we just like, oh, what are you having tonight? Oh, I'm having this, because we eat very different. I don't touch certain things. I don't eat bacon. I don't eat, meat. So, and he likes that stuff. So, whatever works for you, there's really no have to, but I would say, as the Bible teaches us, to check our heart.
Right.
And someone else in the chat said something about bitterness. And I think that's where we have a clear mandate from the Word of God, that as we're stewarding ourselves, we want our hearts to be pure with the Lord. We don't want bitterness to enter in, and we don't want to respond in a reactive way that is unkind, uncaring. We want to be compassionate and loving, but also that doesn't mean I think we've misconstrued compassionate and loving, right?
Yes.
Like I just have to do whatever you want, and I don't get to take care of myself.
Right.
And so it's really, I think, about a healthy balance and who we want to be, which is a big part of our core person, who we're committed to being from our core center.
Right. Greer is saying, my age calls my boundaries, rules to change him. And so I always chuckle at this, Greer, because if I had the ability to change you, I would. And if I had the ability to make my external world different, I would. Boundaries aren't meant to change you. They're meant to identify me. But, if you don't like them, then he has to figure out how he will manage himself. You're just saying what you will do or won't do. Right? He doesn't have to change just because you've said, I'm not willing to do that anymore. He may have to figure out something different. It doesn't necessarily have to change him. And so I'm always about that change control. You're trying to control me. You're trying to change me. If that were possible, I would be doing it. It's not possible. So now I'm focused on myself and what I will do and won't do. Go ahead, Diane.
No, it might be her. It might be. We don't know the context here.
Right.
It might be that you are using a boundary to try to change.
That's true.
I might say to my husband, we're not keeping meat in the house, because I really don't like. I eat fish. I don't eat meat. We're not keeping meat in the house. And he would, I don't believe in it. I don't know if I'm just making this up as we go along. I'm an animal lover. I don't believe in slaughtering animals, so we're not going to have meat in this house, right? And that would certainly be the context of where I'm trying to change him.
Right.
I'm not allowing him to be him, right?
Right.
Yeah, but then, as Elise said, that can also, if I'm not using it to change somebody and I am setting a boundary, it can become manipulative for someone to say to me, well, you're just trying to control me. Right. No, I'm just trying to.
Right. I'm just trying to say where I end and you begin. And this is where I end. I'm not willing to go any further. I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah.
Right? That's, your feelings don't belong to me. Your laundry doesn't belong to me. I mean, it depends on your home and your setup and what you're willing to do and not willing to do. Right. It's never, and that would be certainly misusing or misapplying boundaries. If we are indeed using them to change someone else, that's not the application of boundaries. The application of boundaries is to basically identify myself to others, to define myself to others, so that they know who I am and they get to choose whether they want to be with me. And we're always doing it. Everybody's got boundaries. They just don't declare them. Right. And I would, that's another thing I might kind of throw in here is, ladies, don't ever say that's my boundary. I mean, I think that that's a gauntlet statement. I think it's easier to say I'm not willing to do that. That's not who I am. That doesn't really belong to me. That's not my responsibility. Right. And so we're defining what our boundary is without saying, no, that's my boundary. Because I think on some level, especially in, less healthy relationships, I think those are fighting words. Like, oh yeah, that's your boundary. Well, let me tell you what my boundary is. Right. And now we're getting into control. It's not at all what it's intended to be. And again, they are beautiful. They are lovely. They are about you. They are about defining who you are to others. Are you willing to do that? Why not? Are you taking ownership, of something that doesn't belong to you? And then you realize you have no power over it. As we started off our session around, someone isn't talking, I don't have the power to make you talk. There's no there's nothing in me. So I have to shift to, if you're not willing to talk to me, what might I do for myself? Because they have defined themselves as not willing to do something. I'm not willing to engage in conversation with you. That's actually an unhealthy boundary, but it's a boundary nonetheless. And it can be a healthy boundary in some instances. Like, no, that I'm not willing to engage in a toxic conversation anymore. Like, we might use that same thing of going quiet or being silent. Now, it can be misapplied or misused or used appropriately. And that's what we're talking about in walking in core strength, is taking responsibility and being super aware of the things and the choices that you are making for yourself. All right. Sometimes we're only trying to help, so I'm learning that they don't want our help. Yes. Yeah, Debbie, I love it. Yes, that we're trying to be helpful and they don't want our help. And so there's a good question there, right? A healthy boundary really might say, do you want my help? Because it's just respectful. Like, or, if I could help, how would you want me to help? And then they might say, I don't need your help. And can we respect that? Can we honor that? Even if there's, repercussions from that. I think the more that we give another their agency. Go ahead. What are you looking at?
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking, what I'm hearing a lot in the chat is, some questions about, him being indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
And then, how do I respond to that? And I think I just want to say it would certainly be appropriate to say, that, when you treat me this way and you're not willing to engage with me or hear about what's important to me,
Right.
or, what I value, yet you want to be intimate with me, that's not something I'm willing to do.
Yeah.
And that's an example of you setting a boundary for your own care and well-being. It's not unkind. I would expect often some manipulation in response to that. You know what I mean? Of course, it's going to cause some issues, but it would be an appropriate boundary for you to protect yourself. Why would you be willing to be open and in the most vulnerable ways to someone who is treating you with indifference? That's a healthy way of stewarding yourself.
Right.
And yeah, we do have, let's see here. Here's a question, Elise.
Okay.
How can we set a healthy boundary around, how can we set a boundary around unhealthy habits for our children when he doesn't agree and actually encourages it?
That's tough. It's really tough. And it may come down to, like, when you're with me, you're going to do X. We're going to implement this healthy boundary.
Yeah. I might say to the kids, this might be confusing for you, but, it's really difficult to parent when you're not on the same page, and that causes a lot of issues, especially during adolescence, but you do the best you can, right? Because we can't control the other person. But you can certainly have a conversation with your partner around that, and let your partner know what you will be doing, and invite them to enforce what you're willing to do. But I certainly would have a conversation with the kids and say, look, we differ on this, but when you're with me, this is a value that I have, and this is what we'll be doing. And, I think sometimes we underestimate the power of our influence, and we get caught up in, like, he's going to undo everything I do, but you have influence and you have power as a parent.
Yeah.
We just don't know it in the moment. But, when they get into their 20s and they're like, I remember when you this, and I valued that, they're not going to tell you then, in the middle.
And they're likely to lean towards a more lenient, when they're younger, like, well, wait a minute, mom's saying no, but dad says yes. They're naturally going to lean towards that. But I would, as you're saying, Diana, we think that all our influence can be undone, and that's just not true. And we really see that. Diana and I both have adult children. And so, and it's sweet to hear sometimes as they reflect back what we said yes to and what we said no to and why. And so uh, it is a challenging thing, and my guess is that you've tried to have a conversation around it. But I oftentimes try to see, is there anything that we do agree on? What might we agree on that we really want the best for the children? So are you saying that the best for the children is that they are able to stay up till 10:30 at night? Help me understand, because I think that they should have a bedtime. But we both want the best for the children. I know that. So, so sometimes I'm always like, is there even a thread of agreement? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just that it's probably hard. Your husband wouldn't say, I don't want the best for the children. Right. And so could we start there? Well, what do you feel like the best is? Do you feel like that late hour? Do you feel like that much sugar? Do you feel like that much, soda is, clearly I don't, but do you have a limit on that? Just see if you can engage in what their thinking is around allowing unhealthy habits or gaming or whatever it might be.
Well, I love that, Elise. I think I wrote that down. I think we both agree,
Yeah.
that's a great way to start it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to go, yeah, I don't want the best for the children. So, yeah, so let's start there. Where is a place of agreement? And even if it's just for 1 second, right? Instead, we're in this tug of war. We're in this constant tug of war.
Well, who's going to argue with you that you don't want the best for the kid? You started out. That was good. That was a good move. I like that.
Neutralize it.
Right?
Right. Yeah. So anything, I would say is there any place of agreement? Right. Is there even a thread of agreement?
Where can we agree?
Where can we agree?
And sometimes we don't think like that because we're just feeling all the opposition, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially, even from our topic, if somebody's being quiet and they're just saying no, it's like, well, where do we agree?
Right. Here's one I want to say to you. Yeah. Okay. I wonder if boundaries provide someone the opportunity to change. And if they don't choose to respect or go against the boundaries, this gives me insight into where they are at in the relationship.
Yes.
Yes and yes, right?
Yeah.
Boundaries are can be an invitation to respect, an invitation to relationship, an invitation to change. And I love what I've heard along the way is, especially, and many of our individuals here are already married, but when suppose you're in a new friendship, or if maybe you're single and you are dating, set boundaries on purpose. Like, say no a lot just to see what happens, right? You want to see how someone responds to your boundaries. Can they respect me? Can they honor me?
Yeah. Yeah. We're looking for give and take right from the very beginning. Yeah. And when I say no, what happens? What does that person do? Right. And I love it, Diana, what you're saying is, and we're not, looking to be obstinate in any way, but, in early relationships, people typically are okay with your no, so don't forfeit your no as you get into this relationship and you are delighting in the relationship, because a lot of people are really agreeable. And when we set off saying yes to everything, that's how we're defining ourselves, ladies. Somebody's going to think, oh, she's so easy, or, oh, he's so easy. Right. And then we're not really being our truest self. And so saying no and and observing what happens. Right. Yeah.
Right.
My ex brought computers home for the kids when I specifically asked him not to do that because they were addicted to gaming. Yeah.
Yeah. So how might you set a boundary with that? I certainly wouldn't be using those computers in my home.
Yeah. Yeah. And so unless he's there 24/7, right, in the home, like during COVID times, or you might say, what is your intent with the computer? Is it just about gaming? And he may have, know that he's hoping they'll use it for their homework or whatever. Are you willing to monitor that? How much gaming is okay for you? Not for, for you on the thread, but for your husband. Be curious. Can they game as much as they want to? Is that going to, is that going to be healthy for them? Instead, I think when we see that, everything in us lights up, and we're like, I didn't want that. You didn't even want them. You don't even want the argument. So if the computers are in the house, now you've got to start setting boundaries and rules and regulations and all kinds of stuff around it. And so it was much easier just to keep them out of there. And so what if we rethought about that just for a second? We thought about, for the rest of your children's lives, they're going to have some form of a computer in their hand, right? And so what if we thought about how might we equip them to manage it rather than they can't rules? It's just another thought, because our job is really to equip them to manage themselves well into adulthood. And so if this next generation, no doubt, is going to have this in their hand the rest of their life, then it's our job to equip them how to manage themselves. And we do that by some level of restriction, certainly, but we can equip them in a lot of ways besides restriction. So just a thought. Another option, another choice as we started off today, right? A few more minutes.
Do you want another question?
Well, do you announce a boundary or just implement them? And again, boundaries aren't rules, ladies. Boundaries are about definition, about defining ourselves. So I don't like saying this is a boundary. Just I would prefer that you said, I'm not willing to do that, or I understand, but that's not okay with me, rather than saying, well, I have a boundary. I just think for me personally, I would use that very rarely, because I think it says, well, I have a rule, and it's not. I'm trying to define that's not okay with me, or that's not who I am. Or, you know what, that doesn't belong to me. That's not my responsibility. Okay. Rather than saying my boundary is, because I think that invites this tit for tat. Well, my boundary is I'm, blah, blah, blah. And the truth is that could be his boundary.
So practicing a couple statements like that.
Yeah.
What would that sound like? I don't like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for me.
That doesn't work.
If you're going to engage in the use of X, I'm really not going to want to be close to you.
Right.
Or have a conversation with you, or have physical intimacy with you.
Right.
Your choice, but my choice is, if that's going to be a part of the relationship, I'm going to say no to this piece.
I love that, Diana, because, oftentimes, just like, how we kind of started off today a little bit, like, I can't make you talk. I also can't make you shut up. I also can't make you be quiet. And so don't ever say, you can't say that to me. They can. They just said it. Right. And so, kind of using it like I can't stop you from saying those hurtful words. That belongs to you. But if you continue to say those hurtful words, I'm going to X. And that's how you're going to declare your boundary. Then it doesn't have to even be a threat. It may sound like a threat, but it's not. You're just informing them of what you're going to do. If that's who you are, if you're going to cuss and scream at me, I can't stop you. It's really hurtful, but I'm going to walk out when that begins.
Sometimes I would also say that maybe you don't even have to verbalize that. You might say, if you're gonna be really angry and intense, I'm gonna leave and go for a ride.
Right.
Or maybe you just leave. Maybe you just exit whenever that happens. I mean, you're still communicating.
Absolutely.
Right? Does it have to always be verbalized? I don't know.
Well, and right. You don't have to. I would say kind of the first couple times or the first time, but then after that, why say it? Just do it.
Right.
100%, Diana, just do it. And again, you communicated so loudly without saying a word. 100%, you defined yourself. I'm not willing to do that.
Well, here's another thing that I thought of just as you're speaking, is that also I think sometimes we make the mistake that when we set a boundary, it's going to change the other person. I think sometimes we convince ourselves, like, if I say it enough, maybe they'll get it. Right?
Right.
that's not the goal or the intent of the heart. The intent of the heart is just to live out your true, um,
Yeah.
your will, as God has designed you and has informed you.
Yes.
It's not really to change the other person so they get it. They might, they may not.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And
Close to time. Let's take one more. And then, so ladies, one more. Yeah, our action will verbalize it. Love that. Anything else? Were there any other questions that popped up?
let's see. Um, no, not that I'm noticing.
Okay. Ladies, thank you for all your participation in the chat. I hope you enjoyed today. I hope it was helpful. And I hope you feel more empowered by this time, and to see that you have, God has really gifted you, and that we are to steward our own agency well. And we can do that with really healthy boundaries, but we're responsible for them. Please do not use them as a tool to manipulate in any way. That would be a very unhealthy way, but please use them, in a healthy way, whether somebody on the other side of you or not is being healthy in the relationship. You can do your part. And so, anything else, Diana?
Yeah, I want to end by inviting you all
Yeah.
to go to the link that's on the bottom of your screen, and I want to invite you to a more intimate coaching experience. We have a 3-month walking and core strength program that will start soon, and it's really designed to help you regain your power, to think for yourself, to discern what's true and what's false, and to make good choices. And along with that, we do talk about boundaries and many other things. It's not just defined by boundaries,
Right.
but it's helping you to steward your life well. And so there will be only 15 people in each group. It will meet twice a month for 6 weeks. And we would like you to join us. We have several days and opportunities open, but we will only be accepting 15 in each group. It is a group coaching program.
Right.
And it's a great opportunity to dive in and understand what even is core strength and how do I walk and live in it. It's it's a fundamental.
It is.
Course, really.
It really
So we want to thank you for your time and your openness and your questions and your presence, and we're just grateful to be able to be here with you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Diana. I appreciate it. Thanks, ladies.
Have a nice day.